down. Well, we have spent a lot of time on this program discussing the future of the Biden administration's relations with Israel. But what about how the White House will be able to reestablish ties with the Palestinian Authority after the Trump administration virtually cut off all contact with it while slashing aid to the Palestinian sector? Well, for more, let's go to our senior U.S. correspondent, Mike Wagenheim, in Washington, D.C. And, Mike, of course, it takes two to tango. So the other side of that equation is how will the Palestinians be reacting to the new Biden administration?
Well, based on the new face of the Middle East now, it may take even more than two to tango, Kalev. We're out here in Washington in front of the now closed PLO mission to Washington. It was closed down by the Trump administration in 2018. We're joined by the former General Director of that mission, Nizar Farsakh. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Come a little closer if you could. We're looking here at this mission. There's a tattered Palestinian flag above us. There's an embassy-style real estate advertisement trying to get somebody to move into the place. Is this a metaphor right now for the Palestinian-American relationship?
It actually kind of is. I worked here a few years ago, and I remember us being very excited that not only did we manage to get this space, but that we actually got to fly our flag. That in and of itself was a challenge that we had to negotiate with the State Department to do it. And it's unfortunate that the Trump administration chose to be antagonistic to the Palestinians. We argued with them that it's not in the American national interest to ostracize the Palestinians. But unfortunately, we are where we are, and we're hopeful about the new Biden administration to try to correct that mistake.
Where do you think the Biden administration is going to issue any, in what your eyes would be, course correction?
So we're under no illusion that Palestine is the #1 priority for President Biden. But we do know that his administration and the people around him think that it is important to engage constructively with the Palestinians. So we're hopeful that they would reestablish relations, reopen this office, not only for political reasons, but also we have tens of thousands of Palestinian Americans whose businesses and interests and just regular papers have been denied because they don't have representation here in the U.S. So there are many temporal, let's say, interests that we want to achieve here.
The official reason the Trump administration gave for shutting down this mission was that the PLO, the Palestinians, were not making any progress toward peace with the Israelis. Is that a fair criticism in your eyes?
No, we do not think it was fair. We think the Palestinians have gone out of their way, even to a fault, in trying to reach out to the Israelis and come to an agreement. The challenge has been that the Israeli administration or the Israeli government under Netanyahu was not actually interested in actual negotiations. Prime Minister Netanyahu actually ran on a ticket promising never to have a Palestinian state. And for Palestinians, that's a non-starter. Having said that, we believe the Biden administration realizes how wrong that kind of policy from the Israeli government is, and they would be able to weigh in to have the Israeli government come to their senses.
The incoming Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, testified a few days ago that he does not see any short-term prospects for Israeli-Palestinian peace. So in America's eyes, there is no short-term solution, but there is what's always called management of the conflict. Where do you see America's role here in trying to navigate these next 4 years, maybe toward a longer-term peace?
Sure. So that has always been the challenge we've had in the United States, is that too many key actors in the U.S. Believe that American interests are served by managing the conflict as opposed to resolving the conflict. And we as Palestinians, we are the ones who are suffering more, and that's why we are more invested in resolving it as opposed to staying in this situation. Having said that, there are more urgent things, unfortunately, like the UNRWA funding that is urgent, as well as the situation here for Palestinian Americans, as well as just positive engagement to lessen the assault from the Israeli government on Palestinian land and Palestinian rights.
What are the Palestinians willing to give up for peace?
So the Palestinians believe that peace is possible if we look at a holistic resolution, something where each side gives up something that it doesn't care that much about in order to get something that it really cares about. We're very concerned, and we think it's ill-advised to come to a piecemeal approach. We think that does not help because it makes each party become even more entrenched in its positions. And we also believe that it helps to have the whole region participate in the process, because each country, like the regional actors, can help a lot, both in supplementing or complementing the agreement, as well as act on curbing the spoilers.
The Palestinians essentially have a representative in Congress in Rashida Tlaib. She doesn't represent the Palestinian government, but she is Palestinian. Just a few days ago, she called Israel a racist state. Is that the message that the Palestinians want to send to the American public? Is that helpful?
I mean, she's an American Palestinian representative. She has the right to voice her opinion. She does speak to the pain that the Palestinians feel, that there's this discriminatory treatment of Palestinians and Palestinian Americans, that Israel is the U.S. darling and gets away with literally murder, while Palestinians are treated as terrorists. So she does speak to that pain, but if we want to be constructive in the peace process, we think first we need a voice, we need a listening ear in Washington before we start blaming the Palestinians for like, say, inflammatory language, if you want.
It looks like maybe, possibly, there will be elections for the Palestinians coming up. At least Mahmoud Abbas says there will be. What is the future of the Palestinian government, and how, in whatever form it takes, can it work with the Americans toward whatever objectives it wants to work toward?
Sure, it is a good sign. However, I mean, it's sad, but we've been here before. It's been over 10 years that the Palestinian Authority has been promising elections, and it is not only the PA's fault. There are many sides who are at fault. I think that the Biden administration stands to benefit if it actually weighs in and makes sure that all factions understand the importance of the elections, including Israel. Part of like just the practical challenge is, how do you have elections inside Jerusalem, and how do you facilitate the easy movement of election officials? For sure, we need Israel's support in this and assistance. But of course, it also helps when the Palestinians have one voice, or a more representative voice, because unfortunately for the last 15 years, we have not had renewed elections, and that is a big problem in achieving our goals. So while different factions might see benefit or loss of interest if they engage in elections, I think the U.S. has a role to play to both use sticks and carrots to get all factions to collaborate in achieving the elections.
Quickly, in terms of this mission behind us, the Palestinians are trying to get it reopened by President Biden. One of the sticking points is the funding, the salaries that are continuing to be paid by Palestinians who murder Israelis and maim Israelis. Mahmoud Abbas thinks he has some sort of workaround that he's going to pay based on need rather than on the length of the sentence. Is this realistic, and is this the concession that the Palestinians are going to come up with?
I think, regardless of that example, I think if both parties, the Palestinians and Americans, are coming with good faith to try to come to a resolution and achieve both parties' interests, I think they can do that. And I have a lot of faith in the Biden administration that they do have the experts and the people with let's say the interlocutors that can make that happen. Ultimately, we both want the same thing. We just disagree on how to get there. And I do not think that with this administration we'll have the problems we had with the previous administration that had an a priori interest in just antagonizing the Palestinians because it got them votes here in the U.S.
Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Nizar Farsakh, the former General Director of the PLO mission here in Washington. We'll send it back to you in the studio, Kalev.
Thank you, Mike. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that building behind you in the next couple of weeks or months.